Okay, are we ready to go? Yep. Good morning and welcome to the Executive Committee meeting of the Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Fire Authority. And although members of the public are allowed to attend and observe in limited numbers, we are recording the meeting and a copy will be uploaded onto the authority's YouTube channel. To comply with social distancing guidelines, some officers will be contributing to the meeting remotely. In order to facilitate the best possible experience for all those participating in the meeting, can I please ask those participating remotely to switch off your microphone and cameras when not speaking. You will be audible and visible in the recording of the meeting if you do not do so. And likewise for those people with phones. If remote participants wish to speak during the meeting, please turn on your camera to indicate a wish to respond to a question or make a comment. Officers in the room with me are as follows. So Jason Thelwell, the Chief Fire Officer, Anne Stanwell, Head of Human Resources, hello. Mark Hemming, who is the Director of Finance and Assets, Graham Britton, who's Director of Legal Governance, and Katie Nellis, Democratic Services Officer. So we'll start. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Jeremy. Good morning.
Are there any apologies?
Councillor Marland.
The minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of September. Although I wasn't here, Councillor Hopkins, would you like to take that item because I won't be able to sign them off as a true record? Because
I'm very happy to, Chair. I wasn't expecting to. No, not at all. No. Are there any comments on accuracy?
No question.
I've got to find them there.
no, but it says the 20th of held on the 21st September, but the minutes are actually the 15th.
15th, yeah.
So I was there.
You were there.
There on the 21st. So there are no discrepancies with the minutes then? No? No, thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest? Any matters arising from the previous meeting in the minutes? Any follow-up? I don't believe so.
Can I just ask, are we going to get an update on Great Home later?
Yes,
We are,
do that, yes.
I can do that when we go into exempt session. Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
exempt session, yes. No other matters arising, no? Have we received any questions?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll then go to the immediate detriment framework, which, Mr. Hemmings, I think you're taking us through that, aren't you?
Thank you, Chairman.
And Councillor Hopkins was introduced.
Indeed, this is a things have moved on a pace, I think it's fair to say, since the agenda was produced. So rather than spend time going into any great detail, I'm going to ask Mark to indicate how things have indeed moved since the papers were first produced and for what reasons and the background to that. And then I do have a couple of questions, Chairman, but I'd like to ask when Mark finishes his introduction. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Vice Chairman. Morning, members. It's nice to be in the room with you this morning. I'm going to have to remember to not stare at the top of my laptop my screen at once, so forgive me if I'm staring like that. It's trying to break new habits, I think. So, as Councillor Hopkins says, things have moved on since this paper was published. I'll first give you a little bit of a background into where this has come from, and then we'll explain the revised recommendations that you've got in front of you on your tables. Just before I start, there are some officers in the room or on the call who are within the scope of this paper. They don't need to declare an interest, but just their members are aware that some people are affected by this paper. So this gives the latest position regarding immediate detriment. So essentially this is operational staff who are on the old scheme and then transferred into the new scheme between the 1st of April 2015 and the 31st of March 2022. So at our meeting in March of the Executive Committee, based on guidance and legal opinion, the Executive Committee determined to treat those that were due to retire as if they had never left their old scheme. Since then, there's been some further legal cases against London and Knoxspire, and as a result of that, the LGA and FDU have agreed a framework to enable us to deal with McLeod and Sargent cases. So we're already dealing with what were called Category 1 cases, which is people who are due to retire. So in this respect, the framework helps clarify that to make sure we treat them consistently across all services. Eventually, all cases will have to be revisited when the legislation is laid. So if we treat them consistently across all authorities, it makes it slightly easier in that respect. So in that respect, the framework is very helpful. It also identifies category 2 cases. So that's people that have already retired and would have been transferred to their new scheme at some point before they retired. So the framework now gives us the ability to deal with those cases, which we wanted to deal with before, but we're lacking the clarity to be able to do so. So again, in that respect, it's very helpful. So we're keen to put this paper in front of members at the earliest opportunity. As Councillor Hopkins says, things have moved on slightly since then. So the first bit to bring members' attention to is since the paper was published, HMRC have published some new proposals for tax. The main change that this introduces is that currently, if you get a lump sum more than 12 months after you retire, it's subject to what's called an unauthorised scheme sanction charge. From the 6th of April 2022, that will no longer apply. So it changes the position slightly in that there'll be a charge up until 6th of April, but after that there won't be a charge. Therefore, and the reason we've got the slight change to the recommendations is we believe it would be beneficial for some members and the authority to wait slightly longer than the timescales in the framework to make those payments to people who retired more than 12 months ago. It's not going to change the timescales massively because in the framework you have 14 days to acknowledge whether someone's got a case, 62 days to give them all the information, and then 28 days to make the payment, which by my calculation takes us up to the 1st of March anyway. So it'll only be waiting an extra month and a couple of days in that respect. The other bit to update you on is the number of cases we have. So in the paper it states we've got 30 cases. That is based on the total number of people that have retired since 1st of April 2015 that weren't fully protected members. So since then we've done some further investigation, and of those 30 that retired that weren't fully protected, just over half actually retired before they tapered across anyway, so won't be subject to immediate detriment because they already had the correct benefits. Of the remaining 13 cases, we believe 6 are ill health retirements. And so in terms of priority, we're going to treat the ill health ones first, because those members had no choice as to whether they're retired or not, and then do the other 7 cases, as we said, defer those to the 6th of April to avoid any unauthorised scheme charges, and we'll continue to process anyone that's due to retire prospectively in line with the decision made in March and the revised guidance within the framework. So the recommendations, therefore, are that we adopt the framework, that I'm the authorised signatory to agree the record of compensation and remedy, and then the revision you've got in front of you is that I'm also authorised to agree with scheme members to make payments outside of the framework where it's in their interest and our interest to do so. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour through it, but I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
If I could then, Chair, firstly, can I thank Mark? He's kept me fully updated on this and briefed me on 2 or 3 occasions via email on what has been an ever-changing agenda in many ways, and has been diligent and nimble-footed, as we would expect from Mark. But I would just like to bring that to the attention. I have 2 questions. The first I would ask is, how will we ensure, Mark, all relevant costs are captured both locally and nationally to support any case to the government for funding?
So yeah, in terms of the cost, there's been some kind of slight discrepancy between LGA and Home Office of what's charged when, and we won't actually know the full cost until the legislation is implemented in October 2023. So yeah, it is important that we keep a record of all those costs. So we're doing so locally. I've had conversations with the LGA about how we treat it nationally consistently. I just last evening received a draft of their kind of template for capturing all of these, which they've asked for my comment on, which I'll feed back to them to ensure that we're doing it consistently across all authorities as well, because inevitably there's uncertainties, there's going to be some unpicking as we go forwards. The majority of the costs that we're incurring are simply costs that are being brought forwards, so we'd incur them anyway. We're just doing them sooner because we're treating members as soon as possible, because at the end of the day we can't forget these are people's pensions. We mustn't lose sight of that in all the kind of legalities and costs. So we want to give people the pension they're owed as soon as they're able to do so. There will be some bits around the margins that we need to unpick, so it's important that we also record those costs as well, which we'll do so.
Yes, thank you for that. And what assurances have we had from our pension administrators, West Yorkshire, isn't it, about their capacity to process the cases in accordance with the timelines in the framework?
Okay, so this was a question we posed to West Yorkshire when we had our local pension board meeting a couple of weeks ago, because West Yorkshire not only administer our pension scheme, but they also do it for a number of other fire authorities. I think they're up to about 20 now, so they have about almost 50% of fire services, and they've grown significantly since we joined them because they are very good. They're experts in their subject and they do their job well. They have said they will do their best to meet the timescales, but they cannot guarantee it simply because the number of cases they have. What will help is what we've discussed earlier about prioritising these cases and doing the ill health first, and then anyone within 12 months, and then those after 12 months. That will help spread it out, so it increases the chance of them being able to meet the timescales. We've also, in accordance with the decision we took in March, we've been processing some prospective cases as well. So we've worked on our internal processes. So we've had some back and forth with West Yorkshire about how we give them the information in the best format as soon as possible, so they can have every chance of meeting those deadlines within the paper.
Yeah, I think they're a victim of their own success because they have been so good. But I think there is a risk here, and we just need to be aware of that risk. But I know you are, so you're on top of it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Question I've got. You mentioned that HMRC's cut-off date where they won't be financially caught would be the 6th of April 2020, but you're talking about doing the ill health first.
Yes.
They won't be caught out through the HMRC rules, will they?
Any charges that they incur as a result of the rules not having changed yet, we will compensate them for, so the members themselves won't be disadvantaged.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. And just a question, Mark, I appreciate you saying that obviously you can't determine the financial impact further down the line. Is there a risk that the financial impact may become materially significant for the authority?
Yeah, primarily it's a cash flow issue. You know, we're bringing forward the amount we would have paid out anyway. There's some bits around the edges. With the ill health funds, for example, it's a very case-by-case basis. In some cases, they're actually better off being in the new scheme, so there'll be no payments to make to those people at all. That's why it's so hard to determine. It really is on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? No? Sorry.
Sorry, Chairman. This used to sit in my portfolio. Thank you, David, for taking it. I'm very grateful. But one of the things I was aware of is that some previous firefighters may have passed away in that time, and the remedy is just put on record that there is a remedy for those accounts when they are challenged back to us. But they still have to go, and to check though, they still have to go through this process. The estate has to go through this process still. Do we prioritise those, or do they go into the list of those? There isn't many, thankfully, there isn't very many, but do they just go into the list, or do they get prioritised? And do they get penalised? Would they get penalised in terms of the HMRC rules as well? Those that we could deal with in advance.
Yeah. I'm not aware of any cases that we've got that fall into that category, but certainly we want to look at those as a priority for the same reasons that ill health, people might have adverse circumstances financially in a situation wasn't of their making. So certainly we'd look to prioritise those. And again, if there are any charges they incurred because of a change in legislation or change in prospective legislation, we would look to compensate that member and then recover that money from the government at the end of the day.
Because that may also have affected any state benefits processes that they would have gone through as well.
Yes, and that's similar with ill health, etc.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unpicking to do,
Yeah.
and that's why there's so much detail we need to go through to try and get these cases resolved, hence the timescales involved.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Just another question. When you begin to work out, obviously, the financials of all this, you will keep in contact with Councillor Hopkins, being as he is head of finance. Just it's not set in there, that's all.
Okay.
But I'd just like that sort of noted that you will be notified and kept up to date.
I can only reiterate that Mark has kept me
Yes,
constantly
I appreciate that.
And,
It's not in
but it's not
recommendation.
it's not written yet.
No,
I
no.
appreciate it.
Okay, so the recommendation is on the sheet that we had given to us, just the extra paragraph at 2B. Are we happy with that recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. We now go to item 7, which is on page 53. And this is mine, which is to do with the, gosh, can't even remember how long ago this was. The Vision 4 mobilising system, which is provided by the Secure Solutions Services, and I think we've had a long discussion about this. And I understand that, oh, it's not going to be me. Is it Steve Wells who's going to take us through this? Good morning, Mr. Wells. I hand over to explain about this and the length of time and everything else that's been going on with this, but I hand over to you to explain it to everybody.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Morning, members, and obviously morning, colleagues. This particular paper, as you will see, relates to Thames Valley Fire Control Service, and as members will be aware, this authority, along with Oxfordshire County Council and Royal Berkshire Fire Authority, entered into inter-agency agreement for the provision of our control room, and obviously that commenced in April 2015 when the control room went live. Now there are two particular contracts that underpin the control room, and they're provided by a part of Capita through their Secure Solutions and Services business, and these particular contracts are our mobilising system contract and the contract for the provision, maintenance and support of the DS300 integrated communication control system. So that's a ICS system. Now, back in earlier this year, we became aware that Capita were looking to undertake an extensive review of their particular portfolio. And this resulted in a new company being formed, which is Capita SSS Limited. Now, the two contracts we are currently provided, it sits within Capita's Secure Information Solutions Limited. So it's a subsidiary of Capita PLC. So what their intention is, we've had notification. So the deed of novation is to move those contracts from Capita Secure Information Services into this new company within Capita. Now, if I can draw your attention to page 55 of your packs under the legal implications, because we are part of this inter-agency agreement, if there are any changes to contracts that underpin this particular arrangement in terms of our control room function, then obviously there needs to be each respective fire authority needs to approve to this. So just to reassure members as well, I'm presenting you this paper today, there will be the exact same paper presented to counterparts in Royal Berkshire and Oxfordshire as well, seeking their approval for this transfer if agreed. So effectively the recommendations are on page 53. It is obviously a deed of novation to move those two stated contracts from Capita Secure Information Solutions across to the new company. So that's that's the recommendations. However, I want to draw your attention to, again, page 55 under the risk management section. So if there is agreement to both those recommendations, what you're also agreeing to is allowing Oxfordshire County Council and Royal Berkshire Fire Authority to allow that Capita SSS Limited to be potentially sold to NEC Software Solutions UK Limited. Now, this was something we were made aware of, and members maybe recall that in a paper which was presented at the meeting on the 15th of September, the decision was taken to extend the mobilising contract to March 23. This allowed us the opportunity to fully appreciate what potentially the new provider could offer us in terms of what's the level of service in keeping with what we become accustomed to with Capita. Obviously, this is the next step in relation to that, with Capita looking to sell off a part of their particular business, which potentially has an impact on us. However, we have an opportunity now to see what this new provider is like. Equally, if they don't uphold the standards we expect, then obviously we have the option, should we wish at a later date, to go out to the market and look to identify a more appropriate provider if necessary. But as I say, the recommendations are detailed on page 53, but I just wanted to make certain that members were fully aware of that. By agreeing to those two recommendations, you are then allowing for the progression of the sale of that particular part of Capita onto a new provider. I'm happy to take any questions, Chairman.
May I ask one question? Do we know anything about NEC UK Limited or?
I am aware that they have a sort of a space in this. It's kind of the emergency services communications arena. So they are somebody who have already quite prominent. But other than that, I'm not fully aware.
And if we were to find that they weren't the right partner, it was going to take us 2 years of procurement to actually find somebody and move. Is that right?
So we took the decision to extend the contract to March 23. However, if there are indications that they perhaps may not be a suitable provider, then we have the option to go through what will be a fairly extensive procurement process to identify an alternative provider.
How long is extensive? How long is extensive?
I suppose a procurement exercise could be up to 12 months, just in terms of resources and stuff involved.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Just so I'm aware of NEC as a reputable business, so it doesn't immediately create any concerns for me.
That's interesting to know. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Just who else is out there in the marketplace, and you know, what reputations of these various providers have? I mean, we're all aware that people can't recruit in all kinds of businesses nowadays, and you know, are we vulnerable?
So, in terms of that question, it is a good question. So, in terms of the deed of novation, effectively, at this moment on, that we are just transferring a contract between Capita. However, we need to consider that if we were to agree to that, they are looking to sell that part of their business. Now, all the contractual obligations, liabilities in relation to transferring that contract will be, that new provider will be expected to deliver the exact same service. So that's the level of reassurance we've been provided.
Thank you.
I think one thing I would say, in a paper like this, perhaps one might expect to see a heading under options. So the officers have set out, you know, they may say there are no options, we have no choice, but then set out what the other options might be. Do nothing, do this, do that, or whatever. And those things included here. And that may well be because of the very nature that we're being done to rather than we can do.
Yes.
But maybe that could have been helpful.
But I think the other thing is this has been discussed at a meeting with Royal Berkshire and Oxfordshire in September, when all these things were put forward, and it was agreed that we only had that option of extending it till March 2023, and that there would be a lot of work done to see what was happening. I do take your point, but it's really another paper from people that we work with, our partners.
Yes.
And we're giving the go-ahead to follow it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
do understand what you're saying.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Steve, for your introduction. The way I read the paper and listened to what you said, it sounds like Capita are basically taking the DS300 ICCS software package out of a company and putting it into another company to get it ready to sell to NEC. So do you know whether there's any other software products within the new Capita SSS company that they've created, or is it this purely to put it into a state it can be put to the market?
It's a difficult one to answer. So obviously I'm not aware of any other contracts other than the two that ultimately have an impact on ours. So I'd imagine this is their first step for them to sell a business to another provider, but I'm not aware of what other contracts form part of or will be part of that new business within Capita, other than those that directly impact us, unfortunately.
There's a difference between contracts for the same software and other software products. If it's just a single product, it definitely is, as I think we believe NEC are going to be the preferred purchaser for the group. And the only other question, do we know any other groups of fire authorities or fire services that are using the software?
So from a national perspective, so there's Chief Fire Officer Rob McDougall from Oxfordshire Fire and Rescue Service. So he's got strategic oversight in this, because obviously in terms of the Capita business, they provide similar software functionality to a number of control rooms in other fire and rescue services. So there is a note of caution in relation to this particular subject, which obviously a number of fire services are very interested in, because, as I say, we have assurances, but we don't know what this new provider could be. So yeah, there is a level of interest across the whole country for those services who receive similar arrangements through Capita in terms of the provision.
I think that if it does get sold to anybody, the staff who are running it and providing the service now will probably cheaply across. So the expertise and experience will go with it for a while. But then, as Anna said about the number of people who are available across the marketplace is growing less quickly than the need. So there will be people who find something to do. And the procurement comments earlier about us taking a year to procure will then take 18 months minimum to install. So you're talking 2.5 to 3 years in my experience of from if you said, right, we're moving, so then we're implementing.
It won't be just us. I think there were 16 other fire authorities and control rooms that had this software. So it would be quite a few that would also be in the same boat, and we'd have quite a lot of, they want to say, to make sure that we were properly dealt with.
So if we decide to move, we don't have to wait for the other 15. That's you wouldn't. So it's you have got, as David suggested, options.
Yes.
Between now and hopefully when we don't have to move, when NEC are delivering the same quality of service, perhaps with slightly less money.
It's not so much just this authority. We've still got to work with our partners, Oxfordshire and Berkshire, and it was felt that this was the best way forward to begin with.
I'm not against it. I'm just making some comments on it.
You're sort of discussing more or less what we talked about when we were down in Reading. Exactly the same thing. People are concerned, because it's easy to say that we're just putting it off and we're moving this, because it doesn't always mean that it's going to work like it does. So there was concern, hence the extension, to see how it is going to work. And if it doesn't, then another paper will come forward and we'll look at other things. So you are right to mention that.
I speak with lots of experience.
You've been there.
It's been sold 2 or 3 times by companies I've worked for.
Yes, exactly.
One is that with Serco.
I would assume, Chair, that the original contract that the combined authorities signed with Capita, I think it says this within here, and I'm trying to find it, would have contained a novation clause, basically giving them the ability to do this.
Exactly.
So our hands are tied to that extent, because we signed up to it.
That's right. I think the other thing is Capita is not exactly a small company itself, so it's got to make sure that...
It's getting smaller by the hour, I think.
Oh, you've seen it. So I do understand concerns, because we had the same concerns, didn't we, in Reading? And so it is we're aware that there is that sort of worry in the background. Are we happy then with the recommendations? I know we're not happy, but are we able to support recommendations on page 53?
Agreed.
We then go to item 8, which is the exception of standing orders relating to contracts. And Councillor Hopkins, do you want to introduce this?
Well, very briefly, Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity. The contract, the situations we have here are, as Anne-Marie will outline, the issues I would look at and have looked at when we had a conversation about this were options to assess existing framework contracts for applications that may or may not be available to replace each of the applications in question. Our desire, indeed our requirement, to achieve best value moving forward, and thirdly the business efficiency of the fire authority moving forward. And to that extent, I'm satisfied that, as per the paper, that the recommendations achieve all of those criteria. But Anne-Marie will explain why.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Take us through this item, please.
Good morning, and thank you for the time today. So this is the first of two papers that relate to exemption from standing orders. As an authority, we have rules that we should follow when awarding contracts, called standing orders relating to contracts. A link to this document can be found in the background papers. Both these papers kind of focus on section 4 of the standing orders, and that relates to exemptions. So the first paper relates to a number of key systems. As you will understand, replacing systems can be costly and time-consuming process, and it has a large impact on the teams as they have to deliver those new systems and balance their business as usual. So we have had, over the last 5 years, we've introduced a number of key systems across the service. They include premises risk management system, and that system allows us to capture our prevention work, which is fire and wellness visits, and also our protection work, allowing us to say, okay, at property A, what have we done over the last 3 years? And it allows us to have that level of detail. We also have our resource management system. This system allows us to make sure we have the right resources in the right place to ensure supply and availability. So it lets us know how many JOs we've got available today, junior officers, how many people have got BA skills, just to make sure we have those right skills. And then the final system that this paper relates to is asset management. So this system is used both by our stores team and our property team to track and maintain the assets we have across the service. The challenge we face is that all of these systems are due to come to the end of the contract over a period of 6 months. As Councillor Hopkins has alluded to, we wanted to make sure we weren't just kind of renewing contracts for contract's sake. So we made sure we assessed the system on 2 key questions. Do we still need those systems? And do we feel staying with the current supplier would be the right thing to do? The answer across all 3 systems was yes. They are all business critical systems, and the preference would be to stay with those current suppliers. So with that in mind, we then worked with the procurement team to understand how we can make sure we meet procurement rules. And again, that left us with 2 options. One was to retender for all of those systems over the next 24 months, but that would have a significant expense at approximately £350,000 up front, and no guarantee that the ongoing costs wouldn't increase massively, and also would have service-wide impact to not only build the system, test it, to then train it, and for everybody to learn those new systems. The second option was to complete a contract modification, which allows us to extend the current contract agreement in accordance with the public contracts regulation. So our preference and our recommendation is to extend the contracts in line with the public contracts regulations. So our recommendation is to do this, and that is outlined in the paper. This will allow us to continue working with other fire and rescue services and other public sectors that utilise these systems and develop greater ways of working. Thank you for your time, and happy to take any questions.
Well, the only other thing I would comment is that Anne-Marie and I have had this conversation. I've asked IT for basically for a list moving forward of situations like this that might be coming up in the future, so that we have an audit of where we are in IT systems, applications, etc., so that we do understand well in advance where these situations might come forward might come to us in the future. I think they're working on that at the moment. But at the moment, this is where we are, and I support the recommendations.
Yes. So a register of contracts.
Basically, absolutely. Yes.
The only question I would have is that you've got 2 contracts finishing at the same time. Will that be an issue?
No, sorry. No, the benefit is with the extension, we actually then don't end up with any of them finishing at the same time. So we'll end up with one finishing in March of 25, one finishing in November of 25, and one finishing of March 26. That said, they are still quite close together, but the benefit is none of them will then finish at the same time, which will be a much bigger benefit for us.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is on page 81. Are we happy to take those 3 recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. We go to item 9. Again, Councillor Hopkins, if you'd like to introduce it. And
Well, again, very, very briefly, there's a critical phrase here. WAN and LAN are business critical systems. Without it, the service would not be able to operate. So to use a technical phrase, they've got us by the short and curve.
would you like to
Thank you. I'll avoid that phrase. So just for those that don't know, the wide area network allows us to connect all our stations to the internet. And then the local area network is the connections kind of within the building. So from my PC sat here right now to the printer. And obviously all of those allow to do things like we are today, where we're utilising the team systems. So just so we understand the WAN and LAN, there is a very brief description of WAN and LAN in the paper. So the background to this is that as a service, we have been working with Bucks Council under an umbrella contract for the last 9 years with Updata. We did make the decision to, because that contract was coming to an end, to assess our options. And we are now working still with Bucks Council, but on a partnership with BT to deliver our new WAN and LAN system. Unfortunately, the move to the new supplier has been hit by delays to both the authority and Buckinghamshire Council, and both have needed to extend the contract with Updata. Therefore, to ensure Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service can continue to operate, we have had to complete an emergency extension to the contract for 1 year at a cost of £118,000. This is slightly reduced on previous years, which is good news because, to coin the phrase, they could have got us by the short and curlies and they could have increased it massively, but they haven't, which is really good. So this paper asks you to note, in accordance with standing orders relating to contracts, that the Chief Finance Officer has authorised renewal of the WAN and LAN contract with Updata for a further 1 year until September 2022. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions?
I guess, is it possible just to get a bit more background to why the transfer to BT's gone wrong and created this situation?
Probably
You
BT.
should have asked that in a different place.
Thank you. I shall do so.
I know. I think it's something to do with the equipment, isn't it? The equipment's not available. It got stuck in the Suez Canal.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, that's thrilling, isn't it?
We won't usually.
It's slightly uncomfortably that for a mission critical system that the change in suppliers put us in this position. It suggests something's gone wrong on the risk management side.
I think I'll refer the member to my previous answer. I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Following on that line of thought, what's the risk of having to need to extend past the extension you're requesting, you've actually already approved or asking us to support? Because when we come to an item under our papers, we'll be noting a major delay in another communication system. So are you worried that we might have to extend again? I don't feel comfortable about a bit like Anders. What is the new implementation date for the WAN and LAN by BT? Because I can't see that in this paper.
No, thank you. That's a really good question. Would I say I'm worried? Slightly worried. It's not kind of making me lose any sleep at the moment, but it's always a consideration when you're working on a massive technical project that there's going to be a delay. At the moment, we are penciled in for April. We are working, because of the nature of our systems, we are at the top, well, towards the top of Bucks Council's list to move over because of the nature of what they have to do and the nature of what they have to provide. I would say the NHS are also, Bucks and Buckinghamshire NHS are also part of moving over to this system. So they are also high up that list to make sure that they move over, quickly and efficiently. So yes, as it currently stands, we are planning to be moved over by April of 2022. So we do have a little bit of wiggle room before September. The other benefit is we are 20 stations or 20 sites, whereas Bucks Council are trying to move over hundreds of sites because it's all their offices, all the schools, and a large number of NHS sites as well.
It's all on the links to the control centre. Are they on the same WAN?
No, the control, Thames Valley Control is managed through Berkshire's WAN and LAN, so that is completely separate to this.
Okay. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert.
So I'm going to be cheeky, Chairman. So when we signed contracts with Buckinghamshire County Council, surely there must have been a clause that, you know, if it's on their side of the fence that things go awry, that there'll be some financial contribution to anything that we would have to pay out, and or any special measures in the new contract with BT that should it be delayed, that there would be a compensatory package to those affected. I was wondering whether we should explore that at Buckinghamshire Council and ask them to kind of get their house in order when it comes to managing their customers, because we are a customer of theirs in this aspect. And if we are going to have to lay out of our reserves or out of the budget £118,000, so there should be some recognition of that by Buckinghamshire Council, and they should help us with that cost as a result of the delay, even though it could be anything stuck on, not in, the Suez Canal. It would be, you know, in my view, that's almost not our problem. They're the supplier. That we're going to have to face extra costs as a result. Chairman.
I question with tongue in cheek, but I do accept what he's put forward, because I think it's the same query that we did have. So your answer, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, as it currently stands, it isn't costing us any extra money because we've not actually paid anything to Bucks Council or BT. So from a cost perspective, all we're doing is kind of really moving the start date of the new contract back as well. So it's not like we're paying for two systems in 22-23. So from a cost perspective, the costs haven't increased for the service. But I do acknowledge the point that we are a customer of Bucks Council. But I would say they are working hard to make sure we are a priority.
There may not be a cost on that contract, but there could be a feed-in cost to project management time and or activity on our side. Chairman.
I do know that the contract that we have with Bucks Council is a very good one, because there was a lot of work done behind the scenes to make sure it was a good one. But I do understand what you're saying. If there is any extra cost, I'm sure that there will be that discussion.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Chair, can I ask what is the cost of the new contract when it comes into being per annum?
Oh, that's a really good question. Unfortunately, I don't have it to hand. I will follow up and send it to you separately if that's okay.
I think you're best to have it written rather than we talk about it over an open discussion.
I've done the maths on what they said was saving £44,000 on the current contract. We should hopefully be, I would hope we'd be saving the same on the new contract, but I will wait for the written response.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So the recommendation is on page 87. Are we supporting that?
Agreed.
Thank you. We go to item 10, which is on page 91. Councillor Hopkins, would you like to introduce this? This is very much your show this time.
It's wonderful to have so much. Yes, indeed. I could barely hear what Councillor Lambert was talking about in the last time. His tongue was so firmly in his cheek, he was making his comments inaudible. But, I'm grateful to his intervention and well received. On this particular one, I do have a question, but I think as it's an update, I'm going to pass. Is it Mark or is it Asif? Pass straight across to Asif.
So, Asif, you're there. Welcome, Asif. Good morning.
Good morning, members. Yep, thank you. Good morning, members. I'm presenting the Budget Monitoring Report as at the end of September 2021. Table 1 provides an overview of each directorate's budget and forecast outturn. The current expenditure forecast of 31,456,000 against a budget of 32,277,000 results in an underspend of 821,000. However, Due to additional funding of 329k in relation to protection grants and local tax income guarantee, we are now seeing a net overall underspend of just over 1.1 million. Based on these current projections, we no longer need to utilize the 1.1 million planned use of reserves and instead are now projecting an additional underspend of 38k. However, I must stress that there will probably be fluctuations throughout the year, which we will capture and monitor to ensure that the use of reserves is minimized and offset against any underspends identified within the expenditure budget. If I could now move you on to the next page, which provides a summary of variances seen within each of the directorates, which is the note 1. So you'll see most of the underspends are seen within finance and assets and delivery, corporate development and planning. Within finance and assets, we're seeing just over £250,000 underspend relating to a rates rebate we received in year due to a review we had carried out. The review was carried out by external specialists and resulted in reductions in rateable value, which were backdated to 2017. The other area of high levels of underspend relate predominantly to employee costs. Moving on to now table 2. This shows a breakdown of favourable and adverse variances relating to direct employee costs. Higher underspends are shown within whole time relating to new recruits joining the 2015 pension scheme and replacing existing post holders in the 1992 scheme, which had a higher employer contribution rate. On-call underspends relate to activity and training costs we have seen to date this year, and we are also seeing some underspends within support staff due to delays in recruitment that were predominantly caused by COVID, and restructures have also taken place in the year, which have resulted in some savings as well. These will all be reflected in next year's budget setting, and we'll take these all into consideration for next year to ensure the budget is reflective of our needs. Moving on to now table 3, which is the COVID table, which we introduced last year since we received the COVID funding. As members will be aware, we've received funding in total of around 801k since the start of COVID. And I just want to bring your attention to this table. As you'll see from the table now, since September the 30th, 2021, we have now spent all of the funding. Actually, we've gone slightly over and have currently spent 807k against that budget. Moving on to table 4, which is the funding table, shows the additional 329k funding, which I mentioned earlier, which predominantly relates to protection and additional local tax income guarantee. Finally, if I could just take you on to table 5, which is the capital program. The capital program budget for 2021 is 2.4 million. Property capital funds are being utilised and carried out in relation to all condition surveys that have taken place and remedial works that are taking place in relation to that. In terms of fire appliances and equipment budget, this is being utilised to purchase Red Fleet appliances and operational equipment. You'll see that there's a slight slippage of 369k for Red Fleet appliances. This is predominantly to a delay in appliances that were due to be delivered this year, which will now be delivered next financial year. Finally, the last bit of budget around support budget relates to ICT budget, and a bulk of that, which is the £500,000, relates to the WAN and LAN rollout, which Anne-Marie touched on earlier on. Happy to take any questions.
Very quickly, if I may. I mean, obviously, my comment would be we mustn't be deluded into thinking this is a very good situation to be in. It is what it is because of circumstance, as it were, and we'll do all we can to keep it going moving forward. But as I say, circumstances. I'm sure there'll be questions on the on some of the detail. The obvious question to me is to ask either Asif or maybe Mark, actually, the latest update in our efforts to secure precept flexibility.
Happy to pick that one up, Councillor. Thank you. Members will be aware that since our last meeting, we had the budget. The announcement there was that councils would be limited to no more than 2% increases in their precepts. Obviously, we've been pushing for a number of years now for flexibility to increase for up to £5 our precept. That's not the final outcome. We have kind of another bite of the cherry, as it were, in that we're awaiting the results of the local government finance settlement, which is where the referendum principles will be finalised. So we're keeping up the pressure on anyone and everyone that will listen to us, pressing our case. As members are aware, we've had an HMIC FRS report saying that we don't have the ability, because of our financial situation, to be able to afford all of the appliances and staff that we say we need to protect the public. As Councillor Hopkins says, we shouldn't delude ourselves. This looks quite a good financial position, but there's a very slight kind of contribution to reserves. Actually, the latest position is for October, we're going to be a very small use of reserves. So it is moving, as I've said, and that's based on our current establishment. To be able to afford what we need, we obviously need that flexibility for the £5. So we continue to press for that. We're expecting the local government finance settlement to be announced week commencing 13th of December, I think it is. So I'll be able to bring a further update to members at that meeting or the next meeting after that date.
And with regards to capital projects, there was the delay in some capital equipment, major equipment. That operationally, you're not aware that's going to impact in any way. The stuff we got at the moment will work more than capably into next year.
Yeah, so the workshops facility do a massive, really good job of keeping all our equipment running. It just means they have to do that for a little bit longer with the older equipment until we get the new fleet appliances on the run.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Asif, for taking us through that. I was interested when I read the papers yesterday and when you mentioned it this morning about the underspend on the business rates and the 256,000 that we got back through the review. Is that a net figure we got back? Because we paid the consultants to help us.
Yeah.
Is that net or gross?
That was the net figure that we've actually received in terms of the savings achieved. We've discounted out the cost towards doing the review from it as well. I must stress it is a one-off because this is backdated to 2017. Going forward, we're not going to have the same level of savings. I think year on year it comes to about 60 to 70k overall savings. So yeah, and which will be reflected in next year's budget.
The question is, any other aspects of the business where bringing in the third party to home in and do a deep dive, perhaps to find some savings that we could get back from government departments, which is a question. And then going back, I think, picking up what David said about the vehicles, I just noticed the USAR trucks there have got 54 plates on, so that makes them 17 years old. So yeah, they don't do that many miles, but are they in the plans for renewal in the near future?
Okay. In terms of the USAR vehicles, my understanding is normally useful life of Red Fleet appliances that are used quite regularly tends to be between 15 to 18 years. I'm guessing there will be some form of review with USAR. It's a bit of a delicate one in terms of how that was funded previously and how we received those appliances. So it's all subject to how the funding looks in the future, in all honesty, in terms of USAR, because USAR is a bit of a sort of a separate topic in terms of how we fund for them. And these appliances were provided by the government funding previously. So it's something that we will keep a close eye in the near future. But Mick, did you want to come in there? Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Asif. It was just to say exactly that point on USAR. It was part of a New Dimensions programme that the government funded back in 2002-03 when that all kicked off. But there is a New Dimensions 2 review that's going on at the moment that includes the refresh of USAR and what that looks like, and that's due to be delivered in 2024. So I do sit on the National Ops Committee where the National Resilience elements of that refresh are discussed. So any information I'll get, I'll bring straight back as soon as I can, so we know what that picture looks like as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hamilton, you want to say something?
Yeah, just to pick up Councillor McLean's other point around the reviews, we did a number of years ago get someone to come in and look at all our VAT treatment to make sure we're maximising any reliefs and making use of that. There were some small rebates coming back from that, but we're talking a few thousand here and there. So yeah, we do periodically review items that maybe we can look to recover some money, but yeah, that business rate is by far and away the biggest one that we've had, which is good to know, but as it says, unfortunately it's a one-off.
Yeah, but it's 256k more than we had last year.
Yes.
It's a good result.
Well worth doing, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask, what is the annual on-call budget? I can see obviously the underspend, the total budget for on-call, please.
To be honest, Councillor, I don't have that to hand, and I don't think we break it down in the report. We just look at variances. I can come back to you at a later date. I don't want to just pull out a figure out of thin air, so I could come back to you with a more accurate figure if that's okay.
The reason that you're asking that question, is there another part of that question that you want Asif to respond to?
Yeah, I'd just like to see in terms of, obviously, allowances, it's nearly £250,000. The organisation is right sized, and obviously it's not great that we haven't managed to recruit. And I'd like to know what total impact on the budget it's having. Are we down 10% in on-call staffing? Are we down more than that? Or millions of real money?
Could you let us all have a copy of that response, please?
Will do. Thank you, Councillor.
The request is really. Councillor Lambert.
Chairman, it just might be worth, I don't know if the Deputy Chief Officer might want to come in as well, or maybe too, but we do recruit. We are going through recruiting process. We use our apprenticeship scheme for that, but we do have an issue in recruiting on-call firefighters. It's not the role that the general public want to do as much as you want to do, as we would want them to do anymore. And people don't live as close to the fire stations as they used to, and to meet the time frame to be on call and at the station to roll out on the big red thing. So it's not as simple as saying we've got this cash, we do that, and the money that we have to do this. It is about managing our entire rota system, which has a name, which the name's gone right out of my head. Resource management system. And that helps do that. Yes, it helps do that.
Absolutely, but when Councillor Hall and I met with the Deputy Chief Officer, we looked at the on-call and how it's worked and the roster system. It's very intelligent and very impressive. But when you've got an underspend of in excess of nearly £250,000, it's good to know what proportion of any budget that is. Yes. The other budget, which is part of, is 29 million. So it's good just to be able to put it in totality.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hall wants to ask a question, so would you like to wait until that's done, Mr. Osborne, and then perhaps? Oh, he's disappeared. Oh, you're back.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just on Councillor Lambert's point, I'm not going to disagree, but I'm going to challenge.
Fabulous.
On call, Tame have more than 20, and they've got a queue coming in. So recruitment in Tame isn't a problem. So why is recruitment in High Wycombe, which is 6-7 times the size of Tame, a problem? So perhaps if your committee can go away and look at that and then come back and explain, because in High Wycombe, there's far more than there is in Tame, but Tame can turn out in the day and they can turn out 2 fire engines in the evening and at weekends, but High Wycombe Retain can't. And I need to know in my head, because this £250,000 is a lot of money, and we say, oh well, we are recruiting Retain. Well, there is an issue with Retain, and I'm not going to disagree with you, but I'm going to challenge you. How can we turn this around? I challenge everyone really. How do we turn this around? Why is Tame so successful in Oxfordshire, and why is High Wycombe Retain so unsuccessful in Buckinghamshire? So that's something that I'd like us to mull over, because it's an important issue.
Mr. Osborne.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in on that, Chairman. And the point around Councillor Lambert's piece on on-call recruitment, yes, we're constantly recruiting for on-call, and we try and do targeted campaigns where we're required and when we need them. And we've also changed our contracts, which is quite unique nationally, around second, third and fourth line availability, so you don't have to live within the 5-minute turnout period of the station, with limited success as well. The whole issue of on-call recruitment, I think when we met before, Councillor Hall, was it's a national issue that's been around for many years, and sometimes it's just a quirk of geography and demography where you may be really successful. We've got some stations where recruitment isn't an issue, within Buckinghamshire as well. And they're not always necessarily the ones where we need to have that recruitment, which is why we look at some of those targeted campaigns. I can't really speak for Oxfordshire and for Tame. I know that sometimes Tame do struggle and we have to go across there as well, but if they've got a model, we do work very closely with Tame, and I know that our on-call support officers liaise very well across the border with both our colleagues in Oxfordshire and Royal Berkshire, in fact, to look at our recruitment piece, and we have done some joint work around on-call recruitment, but sometimes it could be as simple as one large employer in an area allowing their staff to respond during the day that could make all of the difference, because there are a lot of quirks around how the on-call system works, but we're trying to evolve and develop our on-call, not just recruitment, but our system as to, to meet the best needs of our communities. And we've got a new on-call support manager that's absolutely looking at where we need to target and maybe look at sort of future campaigns in specific areas to make sure that we meet that demand. But of course, we're always open to learn. We sit on the National Fire Chiefs Council committee that looks at on-call more broadly, and I know we've taken some soundings from, I think it's Devon and Somerset, who have looked at different salaried type options as well. So we're looking at all eventualities to make sure that it's sustainable moving forward. But as I say, sometimes it is just a quirk of an area where you may get a large employer or something else that allows us to recruit from a bigger pool of people during the day. But we will certainly liaise with our colleagues across the border to see if there's anything we're missing.
Thanks, mate. You do work through Stephen, maybe.
Well, yeah, it's
do a study.
it's not something. It's not something that goes onto the back burner and left there. We do look at it, but yeah.
Just a minute before you start deciding amongst yourselves.
Sorry, Jim.
Goodness gracious. Mr. Pebble, would you like to?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Nick has said actually, and also pick up the points that the councillors have made. I mean, to be fair, down in Risborough, I know you're constantly pushing, and rightly so. I know Councillor McLean is in Alney as well. It is an issue for this service in terms of recruitment of on-call. I would like to probably make a few suggestions moving forward. The first is that we have a presentation from the on-call manager about the work that's ongoing and being undertaken at the moment, and the problems and the issues that they're currently facing. I think that would be a positive.
Yeah.
I'm looking around as that, and so come to the executive committee on that. The other thing is that we've had discussions as well around the senior management team as we move forward with the CSR. It looks as though we'll probably get a 3-year view of our finances for the first time in a number of years. And I think that whether the finances are better or worse, a longer term view of them finances is a positive thing to enable the authority to plan. So one of the things that we've been discussing at certainly the senior management team is to bring papers on a quarterly basis, or whenever we bring an update in terms of finance papers, we link that also to an update on recruitment and retention and the number of staff that are employed, so that members can see, actually, bear in mind the majority of our funding, the majority of our money is spent on staff. Members can see quite easily where the money is going and in what areas. And I think them two things have got to come together. The other thing about on-call recruitment that we do offer, I think actually in terms of, I think we probably need to make more of it, is that there are opportunities for on-call staff within the service, and these are unique opportunities, and the HMICFRS have recognised that we are unique. So we have the opportunity for on-call staff not only to be on a range of contracts in terms of their response times, but we also have the opportunity for on-call staff to crew whole-time appliances in days and night times and all of that. Now it's 6 1 half dozen the other, because actually then you get people who want to come into the on-call and then transfer into the whole time. I'm not against that. I think it's a positive thing. If somebody's willing to work for us part-time and give 120 hours commitment a week on the chance that in 3 or 4 years they might get a job full-time, I think that shows quite a lot of commitment. But I think to bring this to the fore, it is an area that we're struggling with. There's no doubt about it. I welcome the challenge and I welcome transparency. And the bit for us is actually in terms of officers, we've got to do more in terms of making members aware of that. So if I say that we'll undertake to bring a presentation to the executive committee, but also work with members in terms of linking the finance to the recruitment piece, would that be more helpful to members moving forward?
Yeah, very much so.
Yes, we were talking about that this morning, and it's probably a very good idea to actually do that. And I think wherever we know there are a lot of people who need to find employment that are not looking for employment, and I know that is the case in my opinion. There are more jobs available. There are more people available than jobs, or is it the other way around?
You know what you
But
mean.
it's the other way around, and we do know there is an issue. Yes.
Can I just say, just obviously we've been talking about on-call recruitment. We're currently recruiting for whole time, so we're recruiting for 18 a whole time. We've got the interviews starting the week commencing the 29th. And we've got people from across the organisation who obviously have been involved with that because it's a main priority. One of my team is kind of looking at what we do at present, and what we're going to be doing is putting a recruitment toolkit together, and that looks at whole-time recruitment, on-call recruitment support, all of those, positive action, all the equality and diversity, all of those different aspects. So there is work kind of ongoing, and certainly kind of I think bring a presentation about what we're doing today. I think that would be really helpful. But if anybody wants to come and speak to me or any of my team about anything that we're doing, then you're obviously more than kind of welcome. There's probably quite a lot I can kind of say, but whether this is the right place. But
I think you've got a lot more people coming forward during for interviews than you've ever had.
Yeah, so I mean the current campaign, obviously there's various stages that we've kind of gone through. So at the minute, we're about to go to interviews. So I think there's 37 people that are moving forward for kind of like 18 places. There's still some areas, but we've been looking at the behaviours of people. Obviously we have to have the role-related testing. There's all of those different kind of aspects, and then the plan afterwards is look at the different stages in terms of the protected characteristics and why are some people getting through. What we want to do is be as proactive as possible moving forward to try and put support in place. Now we have tried to do some of that, but there is more that we know that we can do, and it is part of the whole organisation that needs to get involved. So certainly who's chair, we kind of joint chair the equality and diversity group, something that we really want to kind of get involved with. Brilliant.
Just one more point about the on-call recruitment. I think actually we've sort of had a scattergun approach to it in recent years, and I don't think that's worked. Actually, we're recruiting across the whole of the service. It feels to me that we want we need to target specific areas and build from there. So, for example, if you look at Princess Risborough, or if you look at Olney, or if you look at Winslow, and as they're just examples of on-call stations, it feels to me as though actually let's focus on one station, build that up, and then go and then move on to the next one. So we do it more incrementally. And that feels though probably the better way forward.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, just one other thing that I think might be really useful. We've recently had a new communications manager, so she's been working really closely with my team, just in regards to trying to, get out on kind of all the different social media platforms, and that's going to be really useful to have a look at actually what difference that has made getting into the different communities. I know certainly we've spoken about kind of advertising in kind of different places with the banners, with the gyms, with all of those kind of things. So it is very much something that we're trying to all work together because we're all kind of invested in it.
Exactly. Thank you.
I don't want to preempt a debate. I think the Chief Fire Officer's suggestion is excellent, but and I also don't want to live in the past because we have moved forward. But I recall when we had a retained fire station in Woburn Sands. No one here will remember that. There was a retained fire station in Woburn Sands. The station was manned primarily by people who worked for a company called Plysu, which was literally adjacent. They worked free shift working, which fitted obviously very neatly with the operation of the fire station, and were supported by the business. This is the thing, by Plysu. So members of staff at Plysu were encouraged. And I wonder if there's a deed of work to be done as well with the business community, encouraging business community to encourage its staff, allowing its staff to actually take up these roles. Because I think at the moment within many businesses there is a disincentive to do so. And I think that could be addressed.
Yes, Councillor Kane.
You virtually took the words out of my mouth, David. One of the things.
We are as one in Milton Keynes.
Thank you. Times, Jason. But what was going through my mind was we haven't got an employer the size of Plysu, but very close to the centre of the town is a small industrial estate. It might be an idea to actually go door knocking there as an example. I don't mind which Prince Edward or Windsor, but it's there. There's a number of employees there with probably between 3 and 100 employees. Just go and say, can you encourage? And I think that comes to what David said, that you can get the employer to support it. And when you said CSR, I thought you were going to say corporate social responsibility, and some of those firms might want to put their people in on that basis as well. So just some ideas to throw on the table, and I look forward to the presentation at a future meeting. It's a great idea.
I wonder whether it might be an idea to also talk to Bucks Business First. so that it could be, sort of cascaded down. And it could be something that could, you could go and talk to, one of their business evenings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
We've got Milton Keynes business leaders in up in
You've got
not
the
so
same,
frozen
haven't
north.
you? Yes. Richard Harrington is the chairman, or chief executive, sorry.
Thank you.
Michael Garvey is the. Okay, so we go back to page 91, and the recommendation is that we note the report. Is that duly noted?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed, Asif, for your canter through that. So we go to item 11, which again is Councillor Hopkins. Would you like to introduce this, and then we will go over to Mary Cousins.
Well, what a soap opera this is turning out to be. It really is. I mean, what a testament to the efficiency of government when it interferes with or goes out to market on major IT projects. This I'll let Anne-Marie do the introduction, but and a lot of it is in the public domain now. But the Competition and Markets Authority (CMA) decision to launch a market investigation follows a consultation opened in July 2021, which set out concerns about the impact of the dual role of Motorola as the owner of the company providing the current mobile radio system, Airwave Solutions, and as a key supplier in the rollout of the planned new emergency services network. So what an extraordinary situation to be in. But locally, Anne-Marie is going to comment.
Marie, would you like to update us on this, please, this ongoing saga?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. This paper is the latest in a series of updates regarding the long-running Emergency Services Mobile Communications Programme, or ESMCP. The last update was provided to members in February this year, where I tended to concentrate on programme delivery activities. Since that update, there have been developments regarding the programme's full business case, which has now been formally approved by the Government's Major Projects Review Group in July 2021. We've been expecting a briefing paper to be released by the programme on this. However, this remains outstanding and was again chased up by colleagues in the South Central region recently. This paper refers to the launch by the Competition and Markets Authority of a consultation on a proposal, as Councillor Hopkins has just referred to make a market investigation into the supply of land mobile network services for public safety in Great Britain and the involvement of Motorola in this. Motorola are now wearing two hats as they bought Airwave shortly before the expected close down date of the Airwave network and the go live date for ESN. The consultation closed on the 2nd of September and the CMA report was published on the 25th of October. They've confirmed that a market investigation referral will be made. An inquiry group has now been appointed, and I will report developments as they become available on this. Also mentioned in my report is the establishment of an independent assurance panel to provide assurance regarding the strategic direction of the programme. This group have been asked to complete a high-level review of the local resource model that forms the basis of funding support to transition fire services to the new emergency services network. One outcome of their report was to establish an ESMCP resources board, which comprises representation from the Home Office, the programme and the National Fire Chiefs Council. The board has set up a task and finish group to be chaired by the NFCC ESN senior user, which will meet for the first time in November. The first task that will be looked at are the roles of the NFCC-led regional coordination managers and the programme managers who are employed by each region, and how they can work together in a different way to deliver national work. One item of good news that should be mentioned is the appointment of a new regional programme manager for the South Central region. Paul Channing, who previously worked for the NFCC ESMCP team, will be joining the region in December, and we've been working with Paul for some time in his previous role and look forward to developing that relationship. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. If you were to write it in a book, nobody would believe it, would they?
I mean, the obvious question, Chair, is the whilst this is a national issue, what are the implications for us locally moving forward?
Marie, would you like? Are there any implications locally?
I think in terms of the delays to the programme, it's more about resourcing than anything else. The current airwave network is resilient. We don't have any issues with the current airwave network. We may, moving on, have issues with the actual hardware, but at the moment, locally, we're okay for hardware. I have very, very few defects that come through with airwave terminals. So it's just a matter of continuing to engage with the programme and then making sure that we are ready to transition when we need to by providing the necessary resource.
Thank you. I just cannot believe to be honest, it's such a messy. I think it started in 2018, didn't it?
I think it was earlier than that, actually. I've been working on this for since I finished the fire control project, which was 2015, as we heard earlier. So I've been working on this project since then.
And it was supposed to be in place by now?
2019, yes. Yes. We now are getting indications that it's going to be sort of the mid-2020s before we actually see a close down of this programme.
Sounds a bit like the NHS programme, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your update, and members have noted your update, and we look forward to the next chapter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now go into exempt session, and Mr. Britton, will you do the necessary, please?
Thank you, Chairman. It is recommended that the public and press representatives be excluded from the meeting by virtue of paragraph 1 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act, as the report and minutes contain information relating to an individual or individuals, and paragraph 3, part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as the report and minutes contain information related to the financial and business affairs of a person, including the authority. And on these grounds, it is considered the need to keep that information exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing information. So,
Agreed.
agree.